Hello Year 5, welcome to Monday's guided reading session where we will be doing some vocab Victor work to look at some of the words that we might be unfamiliar with when we read them in today's chapter. So your first task is, I'm going to read you pages 257 to page 266. As I'm reading, can you make a note of any words that you think, oh, I'm not sure what they are? Any unfamiliar vocabulary that I say? If you're ready, it's page 257 if you have a book at home. Quest Orange. In World of Warcraft, the quests are all colour-coded. Grey quests involve defeating people with fewer skills than yourself. They're really easy, but you don't gain much experience. Then there are yellow, a bit harder, orange, a lot harder, and red, certain death. I decided the best thing was to treat this whole thing as a quest. Dr. Drax definitely gave us the impression that she was sending us on a grey quest. Maybe a bit yellow around the edges, but definitely not orange, and certainly not certain death. For a start, we had loads of backup. She took us to Drax Control so that we could see for ourselves. It's a massive glass office with huge plants, and a little water feature and dozens of people strolling around in white shirts talking into headsets, reading their Blackberries. They certainly looked like they knew what they were doing. These are the clever people who will be steering your rocket, Dr. Drax said, so you won't have to do a thing. The infinite possibility really is just a ride, and Drax Control is just like the man in the fairground booth. All you've got to do is be sensible and enjoy the view for a few hours. Oh, and do one simple little thing for me. And it did seem a very simple little thing. We had to press some colour-coded buttons in the right order at the right time. That was it. Because the infinite possibility is really a launch vehicle. That's why it's so big. It was carrying something into space, a payload, a completely cosmic payload. I'll explain it all to you, said Dr. Drax. It's a kind of space minibus. I designed it myself. It's called the Dandelion because it doesn't have engines. Just these big silvery sails that catch the solar wind, just like normal sails catch the normal wind and blow it across space. A spaceship propelled by sunbeams, as quiet and traceless as a dandelion seed. Hence the name. She showed us a model. It looked like a high-sided vehicle with a lot of windows, like an ice cream van, only with no wheels and no ice cream man. Once it was separated from the infinite possibility, the people at Drax Control were going to steer the ice cream van across space, round the back of the moon and back to Earth by remote control. Then it was going to do a lap of the Earth and head back around the moon, and it was going to keep doing that. One lap of the Earth, one lap of the moon, in a kind of figure of 8, forever. It had comfortable seats that turned into beds. Dr. Drax's plan was that as soon as Infinity Park was opened, people would pay to get into a small rocket, dock with the Dandelion during its Earth orbit and stay on for one lap of the moon before going back down to Earth. A sightseeing trip around the moon in an interplanetary ice cream van. The Dandelion was kind of a massive box just under the living quarters of the infinite possibility. All we had to do was shoot up into space, float around for a bit, and then, when Dr. Drax said so, press the buttons in the right order. Red, orange, green. And that would blow the Dandelion off with its own orbit. Then Drax Control would bring us back home in the command module. The buttons are designed to set off a series of small explosive charges. Red to separate the Dandelion from the rocket, orange to blow the covers off the Dandelion, and green to make its sails pop out. We could detonate the charges from the ground, said Dr. Drax, but we thought it best to keep it simple. Well, what could go wrong? Well, nothing did go wrong, exactly. Not with the buttons, not with the charges, not with the Dandelion. The thing that went wrong was us. Next chapter, launch -48. Countdown begins 48 hours before liftoff. For the last 48 hours, we had to stay in the crew quarters and not talk to anyone from outside. It was supposed to be a bonding experience. Also, All the food in the fridge and the cupboards was replaced with space food, like little packs with straws sticking out of them, a bit like Capri Sun, but with meat and veg instead of orange juice. We were supposed to eat space food from now on so that we'd get used to it. The packs had some worrying names, for instance, saliva chicken and porks that make you eat your own hand. Samson, too, said it was probably a problem with the translation. Maybe saliva chicken means mouth-watering chicken, he said, and perhaps pork that makes you eat your own hand is just finger-licking good. Maybe, said Florida, but I think I'll stick to ice cream. Me too, said everyone else. So we just sat there, sucking on space ice cream, 2 flavours, raspberry like a breeze on the lake and banana divided, and practiced the colour-coding button pressing on the computer. During the night, there was a clanging sound, like the lid had fallen off the sky or something. Everyone ran into the living room. When I got there, they were all huddled together. I was going to get into the huddle too when Samson too said, "What is it?" And I realised they were all waiting for me to sort it out. Hassan said, "Is it bears?" "Bears? Why would it be bears?" "Wait here, I'll go and look." I opened the front door, thinking, what if it is bears? I couldn't see any, or smell anything. I could hear a noise, though, a slow, monotonous rumble. But I couldn't see anything except the Possibility Building. Then I realised the building had changed shape. I stood and watched for a while before understanding what was going on. They were moving the rocket. Very, very slowly it was trundling out on its tracks, out into the desert, about 3 miles away. It was moving along the rails to the launch site. You could barely see anything happening, but if you looked away and looked back, you could see a bit more of the rocket had shouldered out of the building. It was like watching the minute hand on the clock. The others all crowded around me, and I said, "Come on, let's get some sleep. It's just the rocket, nothing to be scared of." I was thinking, that is so much scarier than bears. "I want my dad," said Samson too. I knew just how he felt. Next morning, there was a pile of presents waiting for us on the dining table. Some rubbery pencil casey type things called personal in-flight packs, and 5 of the latest Draxcom game consoles. They're called wrist stations. We'd had a visit from Space Santa. Wrist stations are quietly cosmic, by the way. They're basically Game Boys that fit on your wrists, but instead of having some squinty little screen, they project the game onto the wall, like in the cinema, so you can have it as big as you like. They all came loaded with Orbiter 4, Stone Age boneheads, and surfing Eskimos, except mine, which had professional golfer and test your own cholesterol kit. There was a note from Dr. Drax explaining that we could pack whatever we wanted in the personal in-flight bags, PIPs for short, to take as personal luggage on the trip. We could take anything we like, as long as it fitted in the PIP. 2 minutes later, there was a wrist station territorial dispute. Hassan and Max were playing Orbiter 4 together on one wall, and Samson, too, was using another whole wall to play Stonehenge boneheads. So there was nowhere for Florida to play. So there was no way. Let's try again, Miss Rutherford. So there was nowhere for Florida to play. I started by suggesting that Florida and Samson, too, could play boneheads together using the 2-player option, but that suggestion led to immediate off-screen violence. In the end, I told Samson, too, to stand nearer to the wall to make the projection smaller. He said, "No." Everyone stared at me. It was a test of dadness. What was I supposed to do? Beg him? Threaten him? Shove him? If I couldn't control them here in the living room, what would it be like in orbit? I moved the couch into the centre of the room. I checked that it was lined up with the middle of the wall. Then, without even looking at him, I said, "Samson, too, sit down here." And that's all I said. I did try to make it sound like I expected immediate obedience. Then I held my breath. Samson, too, didn't look away from the wall. And he didn't say anything, but he did move forward around the couch. Then he sat down and carried on playing. His game had shrunk to half size now, and there was loads of room for Florida to play. I said, "Now move right to that end, Samson, and Florida, you sit at this end," which they both did. Hassan and Max weren't even looking at me now. I'd passed the test. But what if Samson too had just carried on saying no? I decided then and there to pack Talk to Your Teen into my pip. It was really too big. I had to squeeze it in bit by bit. As I was nudging the rubber sides over the book's spine, I noticed all the dad things on it. 2 overlapping tea stains, like a figure 8, the phone number written in biro, the petrol receipts. It was my dad's book. My dad. I wish he'd turn up now, like he did when I got into that Porsche. I wish he'd turn up and shout, "Stop!" Okay, that's the end of that chapter. Oh my goodness, all sorts of exciting things happening. I quite fancy a wrist station myself, I have to admit. Now, did you write down your list of unfamiliar vocabulary for me as I was reading? Now, here is the worksheet that's on the website today for guided reading, and I'm going to show you how to fill it in. It's very similar to the ones we use in class sometimes. And I've picked out the word monotonous. Now, monotonous is quite a long word, and it's a word that we might not be familiar with, so I thought it was a perfect one to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up the definition. Now, if you have a dictionary at home, you can look it up in there. If not, let me show you a really useful website. This is kids.britannica.com, and it's a dictionary. You can find it by typing Kids Dictionary into Google. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to move it slightly over there, and I'm going to move my word so I can see it, so that I can type it into the search dictionary box. Monotonous. Oh, there's no E on the end. Monotonous. And I'm going to click search, and it should give me a definition. It's just loading. Let's see. Here we go. It's got monotonous. And if you click on this, it will tell you how to pronounce it with a slightly American accent. And it will give you the definition. It says uttered or sounded in one unchanging tone. So if I was going to hum monotonously, I might go like this. Because that's one tone and it's not changing. And number 2, boring from being always the same. A monotonous task. Can you think of any monotonous tasks that you might have to do if you do chores at home? For me, it's got to be washing up. I find that very monotonous. And every time, there's always more. So now I know what it is, and I can put my definition on my page here. There we go. So I can put number 1, a long, unchanging tone. Or number 2, something boring that doesn't change. I wonder which one was in the story. Can you remember what we were talking about when I said monotonous? It was Liam talking about the noise of the rocket. It was that monotonous, a long, unchanging tone as the rocket was being moved to the desert. Let's put monotonous back in the middle. Okay, once you've done that, can you think of some synonyms? Let me put in an example. So synonym, something that means the same thing. Well, we could have boring, we could have dull, we could have unchanging. There we go. Antonyms, can you remember what this one means? That means the opposite. So let's do exciting, changing, varied, all words that mean the opposite of monotonous. Then your challenge is, can you put it into a sentence for me? And then can you use a picture to describe monotonous? Can you draw a picture of something monotonous? Okay, you can do this with the word monotonous, or you can choose another word from your list of unfamiliar vocabulary today. Let me know how you get on, or let Mrs. Elmore know how you get on. Have a fantastic Monday, guys. Bye.